We've been taught to believe that life is about success, convenience, and security. But when you peel back the glossy layers of what we call modern life, what do you really find? Structures that were never built to set us free, but to quietly domesticate us mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. You think you're free because you can choose your brand of phone, your coffee order, your vacation destination. But real freedom isn't about choosing between two curated options. It's about defining the options yourself. And that is what we've forgotten how to do. They've taken away the battlefield and replaced it with boardrooms, screens, and algorithms. You're not being whipped or shackled, not physically, but you're being steered. Controlled, tamed, you follow the path not because you chose it, but because it was already carved out and advertised to you as the dream. But whose dream is it? Certainly not yours. We've been conditioned to equate comfort with happiness, to confuse stability with peace, and to believe obedience is virtue. Look around. Everything is designed to make you passive, your entertainment, your work structure, your education, even your relationships. You are not encouraged to question, only to consume, not to resist, only to adapt. You aren't living freely. You're existing inside a well-decorated prison, applauding the very walls that confine you. And those who built this prison, they were clever. They knew you wouldn't rebel against soft beds, fast Wi-Fi, or 10-second dopamine hits. No, you'd embrace them. You'd even defend them. They didn't have to chain your body. They only needed to dull your mind. From birth, you're handed a script. Follow this, do that, don't ask why. You're taught how to behave, not how to think. You memorize answers instead of forming questions. And over time, you begin to accept it. You start policing yourself. You censor your dreams to fit inside job titles. You shrink your soul to fit the box of normal. You become your own warden, locking yourself up and throwing away the key, all while smiling for the camera. But I ask you, how long will you pretend this is enough? How long will you keep dancing in this masquerade of false liberty? You were not born to be another cog, another file, another neatly categorized citizen in the system's spreadsheet. You were born to create, to feel, to burn with purpose. You were born to tear down lies and build truths of your own making, and now is the time to wake up, because the prison isn't made of bars. It's made of habits, of beliefs, of silence. Every time you avoid confrontation with your conscience, you reinforce the walls. Every time you silence your curiosity, you tighten the locks. Every time you trade your voice for validation, your soul grows smaller. You must begin to see it for what it is, the comfort that controls you, the routine that numbs you, the illusion that blinds you. Everything around you has been carefully crafted to feel just real enough to keep you asleep, just sweet enough to keep you sedated. They don't want you angry, they want you entertained. They don't want you aware, they want you engaged, so long as you never ask why. But awareness is the first weapon. Once you see the walls, you can choose to break them. And breaking them doesn't mean becoming reckless. It means becoming conscious. It means choosing meaning over mimicry, truth over convenience, risk over routine. The most dangerous man in any society isn't the one who shouts. He's the one who thinks. The one who sees the game and refuses to play by the rules written in secrecy. And that's who you must become, not because it's easy, but because the alternative is a slow death with a smile. You must unlearn obedience, tear off the masks, and embrace the discomfort of real clarity. You must begin to live by your own design. This isn't life. It's a well-decorated prison. But the good news is the door isn't locked. You just have to see it, and more importantly, you have to walk through it. Walk through it trembling if you must, but walk, tear off the blindfold, challenge the inherited truths, listen to the voice inside you that's been silenced for too long. That voice isn't crazy. That voice isn't dangerous. That voice is you. The illusion of freedom is the most dangerous deception of all, because it convinces you not only that you are free, but that you chose the very cage you're in. In today's world, we're constantly bombarded with messages that celebrate autonomy, liberty, and independence. Yet, in practice, what we experience is a narrow, pre-approved set of options designed not to liberate but to pacify. This isn't freedom, it's a simulation of choice, meticulously engineered to make you believe you're in control while the real decisions are made far above your reach. And we accept this simulation because it's comfortable, because the alternative, true self-determination, is messy, uncertain, and demands a level of responsibility most people have never been trained to handle. You're told you're free because you can vote, buy, post, and scroll. But none of that is real power. Voting between two pre-packaged politicians who were filtered through corporate interests and media narratives isn't self-governance. Choosing between two career paths that ultimately serve the same economic machine isn't liberation. Even your online presence, your avatar, your feed, your personal brand is designed to mirror what algorithms deem acceptable, profitable, or safe. You think you're expressing yourself, but really you're performing within a digital framework that profits off your every move. That's not freedom. That's behavioral conditioning, and the most haunting part. Most people don't even know what freedom feels like anymore. We've confused convenience with liberty. We've mistaken having choices for having agency. Real freedom demands discomfort. It involves doubt, rebellion, sacrifice, and risk. But we've been taught to fear those things. We're told that questioning the system is a sign of instability, that discomfort is dysfunction, and that security should be our highest aspiration. So we settle. We call it peace, but it's stagnation. We call it safety, but it's submission. We go to school to be trained, not to be awakened. We're told what to study, how to behave, and what success should look like. By the time we reach adulthood, most of us have internalized an entire operating system that teaches us to follow, comply, and compete, not to think, connect, or resist. And even when someone begins to sense the cracks in the system, society has ready-made coping mechanisms to keep them docile. Therapy that redirects their anger inward, medications that dull their emotional range, entertainment that distracts them with 1,000 tiny pleasures. There's no space for healthy rebellion, only sanitized discontent. You see it in the way people live their lives, always chasing something, but never sure why. They move through jobs, relationships, cities, and apps with a hollow kind of urgency. But deep inside, they know something is missing. That gnawing feeling isn't failure. It's your soul reacting to the lie. That's what happens when you're told you're free but feel trapped. When you follow every rule, do everything right, and still end up feeling empty. That's not a personal crisis. That's a systemic symptom. The architecture of this illusion is brilliant because it leaves you with just enough autonomy to believe you're in charge. You can decorate your cage. You can stream music, customize your settings, even start a YouTube channel, but always within the accepted bounds of the system. Say something too real, too raw, too disruptive, you're silenced, deplatformed. Marginalized, they don't need to burn books when they can flood your mind with noise. They don't need to lock you up when they can program you to stay still. This is why the illusion of freedom is more effective than any dictatorship. It doesn't require force, it just requires distraction. It doesn't threaten you with violence, it seduces you with comfort, and once you believe you're free, you stop resisting, you stop questioning. You even defend the very system that contains you because it gave you just enough to feel grateful. You become your own jailer, guarding the gates of a prison you no longer recognize as a prison at all. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a spark remains. It's that voice inside you, the one that speaks when the noise dies down, when the lights go off and you're alone with yourself. that voice that says, "This isn't it, there's something more." That voice is your original self, unprogrammed, unprocessed, unbroken. But for it to survive, you have to let the illusion shatter. You have to allow the discomfort of seeing the truth, that you've been living inside a system built to keep you small, passive, predictable. This isn't about paranoia. This is about clarity, about reclaiming the power to choose not just from the options you've been given, but to create your own, because until you do, everything else is decoration. No matter how beautiful the walls are, they're still walls, and no matter how gentle the handcuffs feel, they're still chains. And once you begin to see the illusion for what it is, that what you've called freedom has been a series of silent manipulations, the next truth becomes even harder to swallow. The very things you cherish most, the comforts you rely on, the luxuries you proudly display, are often the tools of your control. The prison was never meant to feel like punishment. It was designed to feel like paradise. The more appealing it is, the less likely you are to leave it. That's the brilliance of it. Control disguised as comfort, and domination wrapped in the soft language of lifestyle, success, and personal growth. You're not held down by violence or fear, but by luxury, ease, and the constant availability of distraction. They've made the prison so pleasurable, so aesthetically satisfying, that you've mistaken captivity for contentment. Think about how the system neutralizes any urge to rebel. You're stressed from work? Buy something, feel insignificant, post something, overwhelmed by the absurdity of it all, binge. Watch a show where everything is scripted and resolved in 30 minutes. There's always an antidote ready, not to cure the disease, but to numb the symptoms just enough to keep you going. You're not thriving, you're being pacified. Look around. The architecture of our society is built not to foster growth, but to sustain obedience. Suburban homes with fences, cars you drive to sit in traffic, offices with fluorescent lights and timed bathroom break, all while you dream of weekend getaways and luxury brands you can finance but not afford. These aren't signs of freedom. They're clever mechanisms that keep you occupied, distracted, and indebted, mentally, emotionally, and financially. When you live under constant low-level sedation, you don't ask dangerous questions. You don't look too closely at the foundations. You don't revolt. You just adjust. We've been led to believe that the highest form of success is integration into a system that feeds off your labor, your time, your dreams. The clearer your credit score, the deeper your conditioning, the more stable your life, the more deeply entrenched you are in the comfort trap. You chase promotions, not purpose. You prioritize image over identity. You settle for surface pleasure because true fulfillment would require disruption, and disruption is something this system cannot afford, for one awakened soul inspires others. That's why the design had to be so flawless. Even the spaces that should be sacred, your mind, your body, your relationships, have been turned into marketplaces. Your attention is sold by the second. Your body is monitored and modified by trends and filters. Your relationships are built and broken by dating apps engineered to keep you addicted, not connected. Everything is monetized. Everything is manipulated. Even your dissatisfaction has become profitable. Every insecurity is a marketing opportunity. Every moment of discomfort is met with a subscription, a product, a pill. They've turned your very hunger for meaning into currency. But let's be clear, this system doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to use you efficiently, quietly, and endlessly. It wants you just comfortable enough not to rebel, just inspired enough to keep producing, just distracted enough to never notice that the dreams you're chasing were never really yours. The cage isn't physical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's psychological. You don't see the bars because they're built from desires you didn't even realize were implanted in you. You don't feel the chains because they take the form of routine, security, and normalcy. The most effective form of control is the kind you accept willingly. If they can convince you that this is what life is supposed to be, that the anxiety, the burnout, the disconnection are simply the price of adulthood, then they don't need to restrain you. You'll restrain yourself. You'll wake up each day and re-enter the game without question, believing that this is as good as it gets. You'll even shame others for stepping outside the lines because deep down, their defiance reminds you of your own imprisonment. And here's the most bitter truth. The more luxurious your prison becomes, the less likely you are to see it as a prison at all. A high-rise apartment with a view, a six-figure salary, a designer wardrobe. None of these things are inherently evil, but when they're used to pacify you, to seduce you into silence, to distract you from deeper questions, then they become velvet handcuffs. You might look successful. You might feel accomplished, but inside, a part of you will always know that the cost of comfort was your autonomy, and so the question must be asked again and again, what are you trading for convenience? What have you sacrificed in order to maintain the illusion of stability, the dream job that kills your spirit, the constant connectivity that leaves you disconnected from yourself, the curated lifestyle that impresses everyone but satisfies no one? You may feel safe, but are you alive? You may be admired, but are you free? Because when control is draped in comfort, it becomes invisible. And when captivity feels good, liberation feels like pain. When you begin to question the nature of your so-called freedom and recognize the comfort traps as instruments of control, the next layer becomes disturbingly clear. We haven't just been manipulated externally, we've been conditioned internally. What makes this prison so enduring isn't only its architecture of convenience, but the way it has rewired your very psychology. From birth, you're not just taught what to do, you're trained how to think, what to desire, what to fear, and most dangerously, what to accept as truth. Control doesn't begin with laws or policies. It begins in the mind, where belief becomes obedience and perception becomes prison. You weren't given your beliefs, you were programmed with them. From the earliest days of school, you were rewarded for compliance, not curiosity. You were praised for memorizing, not questioning. Every system you moved through, the education system, the media landscape, the job market, rewarded predictability and punished deviation. You weren't raised to be awake. You were molded to fit in. You learned to hide your instincts, to silence your questions, to doubt your inner voice. That is psychological warfare, training you to distrust yourself, so that you'll rely entirely on the system to tell you who you are and what you're worth. This conditioning isn't aggressive, it's subtle. It doesn't scream at you to conform. It whispers in the form of expectations, algorithms, and social norms. You learn, slowly and unconsciously, that being liked is more important than being real. That being comfortable is safer than being honest. That the path of least resistance is the only path that leads to acceptance. And so you build a persona, one acceptable to society. You suppress what doesn't fit. You exaggerate what gets rewarded, and you perform day after day until the mask becomes so fused to your identity that you forget it's even there. Even your pain is managed. When you feel anxious, instead of asking what system is causing your distress, you're taught to view your discomfort as a personal flaw, a chemical imbalance, a mental illness, a lack of gratitude. You're given pills, affirmations, productivity hacks. You're told to focus on the positive, to be grateful for what you have, and to trust the process. But no one asks if the process itself is broken. No one questions whether the anxiety is a rational response to a deeply unnatural way of living. Because if you ever realize that your distress is justified, the entire illusion begins to unravel. So they redirect your awakening inward, turning your rising awareness into shame and guilt. You're not encouraged to see your dissatisfaction as insight. You're told it's weakness. You're not urged to challenge the structures around you. You're told to fix yourself. This is how psychological conditioning works best. It doesn't just suppress rebellion, it convinces you that the rebellion is pathological. That if you're unhappy, it's because you are broken, not the world you've been forced to adapt to. Even your aspirations have been engineered. You're taught to dream within boundaries, to want what the system can profit from. You aim for promotions, not purpose. You chase status symbols instead of inner truth. You want more not because you've chosen it, but because you've been trained to desire endlessly. Your wants are not your own. They were implanted, carefully, repeatedly, until you began mistaking them for your will. This is the genius of the machine. It doesn't just suppress your mind, it colonizes it. And when you begin to question any of this, notice what happens. You start feeling isolated. People look at you like you're negative, cynical, unstable, not because you're wrong, but because you're breaking the spell. And the spell is sacred. The masses don't protect the truth. They protect the system that provides their comfort, their identity, their world view. So the moment you begin to resist, you're labeled a threat, not to their safety, but to their illusion. That's why awakening is painful. Not because truth is cruel, but because conditioning has made lies feel like home. And leaving that home, even when it's a prison, means stepping into uncertainty, into loneliness, into vulnerability. Most people aren't ready for that. They'll double down on the conditioning, defend their chains, and dismiss anyone who questions the rules. That's how deeply the programming runs. It teaches you to fear your own liberation, but conditioning only holds power as long as it remains invisible. The moment you see it, really see it, you gain the first tool of freedom, awareness. You begin to hear your thoughts differently. You start asking where they come from, who benefits from them, and whether they align with your truth or someone else's agenda. This isn't an easy path. It's raw, disorienting, and often isolating. But it's real, and in a world built on performance and programming, reality is the most radical act of all. The key to breaking the psychological chains isn't to fight the system directly, at least not at first, but to unlearn the reflexes it has embedded in you. The reflex to stay silent, the reflex to conform, the reflex to distrust your own intuition. When you reclaim your mind, the prison begins to weaken, because while they can build walls around your body, they cannot fully control a mind that is conscious, questioning, and awake. The fight for freedom starts not in the streets, but in the silence between your own thoughts. That's where the revolution begins. Once you recognize how deeply your mind has been conditioned, how your beliefs, desires, and even your inner dialogue have been shaped to serve a larger system, the most urgent and terrifying question becomes, what do I do now? It's here, standing in the wreckage of your former perceptions, that the real challenge begins, because breaking the illusion is not enough. Awakening isn't a destination. It's a beginning. Now comes the responsibility of rebuilding your sense of self, your reality, your life, brick by brick, from the inside out. And that process requires not just clarity, but courage, because true freedom doesn't come from knowing the truth. It comes from acting on it. The system you've been living in was never built to accommodate real individuality. It was designed to absorb, neutralize, and commodify every spark of originality until even rebellion is turned into a brand. So when you start living outside the rules, you will lose things. You'll lose the comfort of belonging. You'll lose the praise that comes with playing along. You may even lose people, friends, family, lovers, who can't handle the mirror you now hold up to their lives. Because when you begin to embody what freedom really looks like, you threaten the unspoken agreement society has made. We will all keep pretending this is normal so that we don't have to face how much we've compromised ourselves. That's why reclaiming your life means learning how to stand alone without the scaffolding of approval, applause, or certainty. And that loneliness, the ache of separation from a world you once felt part of, isn't a punishment. It's proof that you are shedding the skin of your conditioning. It's not isolation, it's incubation, and in that solitude you begin to feel something else, a pulse that's faint but unmistakably real. Your own will, your own voice, your own rhythm, it had always been there beneath the noise, beneath the programming. Now it's time to follow it. You begin to ask different questions, not what should I do, but what do I believe, not what's the safest path, but what's the most honest one. You stop measuring your worth in likes, titles, or income, and start measuring it in integrity, in alignment, in the peace that comes when your inner and outer world begin to match. That's when you start to rebuild, not for others, not to fit in, not to please, but to become. To become something unfiltered, unbranded, undivided. This kind of living is not loud. It doesn't need to be. It is not performative because it doesn't need validation. You might still work a job, still exist within the system, but your posture toward it has changed. You're no longer hypnotized. You participate consciously, not obediently. You no longer sell your soul for comfort, because you've realized that any comfort bought with self, frail, is just another form of slow death. You've felt the weight of truth now, and once you do, you can't go back to pretending the cage is a home. You also begin to realize how much strength it takes to live truthfully, not just once, not just in big moments, but every single day in your words, your decisions, your relationships. Because the world will continue offering you the mask. It will tempt you to return to the lie with promises of ease, acceptance, and surface peace. But you'll remember how that peace always came at the cost of something sacred. You'll remember how the smile on your face didn't match the scream in your chest. And you'll say no, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The real revolution, then, is inner. It's waking up and refusing to participate in your own suppression. It's learning how to sit with discomfort instead of medicating it, how to face pain without turning it into distraction, how to move through fear without letting it dictate your choices. It's doing the work of becoming conscious again, of peeling back every layer of programming and asking, is this mine? Do I choose this? Or was I told this is who I should be? You'll begin to seek out others who are on the same path, not followers, not leaders, but fellow builders. People who are done with pretending, people who have stopped trying to fix themselves and started trying to find themselves. In those rare connections, you'll experience something most people never do: communion, not competition; dialogue, not performance; presence, not projection. That's when you realize freedom is not a destination or a reward. It's a practice, a decision made moment by moment to stay awake in a world designed to keep you asleep. And the world around you, it won't change overnight. The systems will still hum, the illusions will still seduce, but you will have changed, and that is everything. Because once a single person dares to live unmasked, it creates space for others to do the same. And slowly, the prison loses power, not because it was overthrown from the outside, but because its foundations were abandoned from within, brick by brick, thought by thought, choice by choice, one awakened life at a time.